The unknown signal. The discovery at the edge of known space. The Krithan Dominion had ruled the galaxy for 5,000 years without serious challenge. Their empire stretched across 12,000 star systems, and their technology was considered the pinnacle of galactic achievement. On the bridge of the flagship Sovereign Dawn, Admiral Vorath stood with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. His silver skin reflected the soft blue glow of the holographic displays that surrounded him, and his 6 eyes scanned the data with practiced efficiency. The Sovereign Dawn was a masterpiece of Krithan engineering. 3 kilometers long and armed with plasma cannons capable of vaporizing asteroids, the vessel represented the absolute power of the Dominion. Its shields could withstand the output of a small star, and its faster-than-light drives could cross the galaxy in weeks. Vorath had commanded this ship for 20 cycles, and in that time he had brought 17 primitive civilizations under Dominion control without firing a single shot. The mere sight of his vessel was usually enough to convince any species of the futility of resistance. And unexpected transmission. The communications officer, a young Krithan named Sela, suddenly stiffened at her station. Her head tentacles twitched with confusion as she processed the incoming data. She turned to Admiral Vorath and reported that they had detected an unusual transmission from Sector 773, right at the edge of explored space. The signal was broadcasting on multiple frequencies, using a mathematical pattern that suggested intelligence, but the language was completely unknown to their vast translation database. Vorath moved closer to examine the data himself. In 5,000 years of galactic exploration, the Krithans had encountered over 200 sentient species, and their translation systems contained every known language in the galaxy. The fact that this signal could not be immediately translated was unusual enough to warrant investigation. He ordered Sela to triangulate the source of the transmission and set a course to intercept. The Sovereign Dawn shifted smoothly through space, its powerful engines barely making a sound as they propelled the massive vessel toward the unknown signal. Within 2 hours, they arrived at the coordinates and found something that made every officer on the bridge pause in confusion. First visual contact. Floating in the void of space was a vessel unlike anything in the Krithan databases. The ship was angular and compact, measuring perhaps 400 meters in length, which made it smaller than even their lightest scout vessels. Its hull appeared to be constructed from simple metallic alloys, the kind of materials that civilizations used in their early spacefaring days before discovering more advanced composites and energy-based construction techniques. Strange markings were painted along the side of the hull in white letters that the translation system struggled to interpret. After several moments, the computer rendered the words into Krithan Standard, UHSN Resolute. Below that was a series of numbers and what appeared to be a flag showing a blue planet with green landmasses surrounded by stars on a dark field. The tactical officer, Commander Thex, ran a full sensor sweep of the vessel and reported his findings with barely concealed amusement. The ship had no energy shielding whatsoever, which was shocking for any vessel operating in deep space. Its hull was indeed simple refined metal, likely steel or titanium alloy based on the spectral analysis. The power signature suggested fusion reactors, technology that the Krithans had abandoned 3,000 years ago in favor of zero-point energy extraction. Most amusing of all, the ship appeared to have chemical rockets as backup propulsion systems. Laughter rippled across the bridge. Several officers exchanged glances and comments about finding a lost colony ship or perhaps a cargo hauler from some forgotten outpost. Commander Thek suggested that the vessel might have drifted through a wormhole from some backwater system where technology had stagnated. Admiral Vorath raised a hand for silence and studied the primitive ship more carefully. Despite its crude appearance, something about the vessel bothered him. It was too deliberately designed, too purposeful in its construction. First contact. Before Vorath could order further investigation, the communications panel chimed with an incoming transmission. Sela worked quickly to process the signal, and after a few moments, a voice came through the speakers. The language was harsh and unfamiliar, full of sharp consonants and strange intonations. The translation matrix worked frantically to decode the meaning, analyzing syntax and context clues from the mathematical patterns embedded in the signal. When the translation finally appeared on the displays, Admiral Vorath read it with growing disbelief. The message identified the sender as Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Human Star Navy destroyer Resolute. The transmission stated clearly that the Krithan vessel had entered territory claimed by the Terran Republic and was in violation of human sovereignty. The message concluded with a direct order: withdraw immediately from human space or be considered a hostile military force subject to defensive action. The bridge fell silent for exactly 5 seconds before someone began to laugh. Then another officer joined in, and soon the entire command crew was laughing at the audacity of the primitive vessel. A ship with no shields, using fusion power and metal hulls, was threatening the flagship of the Krithan Dominion. The idea was so absurd that it seemed like an elaborate joke. Admiral Vorath allowed himself a slight smile, showing his pointed teeth. He found the situation more amusing than threatening. Throughout his long career, he had encountered primitive species before. They often displayed bravado when they first encountered more advanced civilizations, puffing themselves up like territorial animals, trying to appear larger than they really are. A demonstration of Krithan power would quickly correct their misconceptions. Opening the channel. Vorath ordered Sela to open a visual communication channel. He wanted to see these humans who thought they could threaten a Dominion flagship. The main view screen flickered and displayed the interior of what could only charitably be described as a functional command center. The space was cramped compared to Krithan standards, with physical controls and mechanical switches visible on every surface. Computer screens showed what appeared to be primitive flat displays, rather than holographic projections. Standing in the center of this crude bridge was a human female. She was shorter than a Krithan, with pale skin and dark hair tied back in a practical style. Her eyes were a striking shade of brown, and they stared at Vorath with an intensity that surprised him. He wore a dark blue uniform with various patches and insignia that meant nothing to the admiral, but suggested some form of military hierarchy. Behind her, other humans worked at their stations with focused efficiency. Admiral Vorath drew himself up to his full height and spoke in his most commanding voice. He introduced himself as Admiral Vorath of the Krithan Dominion, commander of the flagship Sovereign Dawn, and representative of the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. He informed the human that she was operating in space that had been claimed by the Dominion for over 2,000 years, long before her species likely achieved spaceflight. Vorath explained with exaggerated patience that the Dominion had established territorial rights through the ancient laws of the Galactic Concord, agreements that predated human civilization by millennia. The human vessel was in violation of these laws and would be seized under standard protocols. He demanded that Captain Vasquez powered down her weapon systems, such as they were, and prepared to be boarded.
Her crew would be processed and relocated to an appropriate colony world where they could be properly educated about galactic civilization. The human response. Captain Vasquez listened to the entire speech without changing her expression. When Vorath finished, she remained silent for a moment, as if considering her response carefully. Then she leaned forward slightly and spoke in a clear, steady voice that the translation system rendered into Crythan Standard. She stated that Admiral Vorath had exactly 60 seconds to reverse course and exit human territory. The human captain explained that the Terran Republic did not recognize the authority of the Crythan Dominion over this region of space. Humanity had established colonies in this sector over the past 50 years, and those colonies were under the protection of the United.
Admiral Vorath felt his amusement growing. The human spoke with such confidence, as if a primitive vessel posed any threat whatsoever to his mighty warship. He asked with obvious condescension what exactly Captain Vasquez thought she could do if he refused her demands. Her ship had no shields and used technology that was thousands of years obsolete by galactic standards. A single shot from his plasma cannons could reduce her vessel to its component atoms. Captain Vasquez did not blink. She stated simply that Admiral Vorath was making assumptions based on incomplete information. She suggested that he not underestimate human engineering or human resolve. The Terran Republic had not survived and thrived by being easy prey for larger predators. She repeated her warning, 60 seconds to withdraw, or the Resolute would open fire. The fatal decision. Admiral Vorath had heard enough. These humans clearly did not understand the reality of their situation. They needed to be taught a lesson about respect and the proper hierarchy of galactic civilization. He turned to Commander Thex and gave an order with casual dismissal in his voice. Fire a precision plasma burst at their propulsion systems. Not enough to destroy the vessel, but sufficient to disable their engines and demonstrate the futility of resistance. Commander Thex acknowledged the order with enthusiasm and began targeting the human ship's fusion reactors. The Sovereign Dawn's main plasma cannon began charging, drawing power from the ship's zero-point generators. Energy readings spiked across the board as the weapon prepared to fire. On the view screen, Captain Vasquez shook her head slowly, as if disappointed but not surprised. The plasma cannon fired with a brilliant flash of light. A coherent beam of superheated matter contained within magnetic fields and traveling at a significant fraction of light speed crossed the distance between the two ships in less than a second. The beam struck the Resolute directly at the rear section where the fusion drives were located. The Crythans expected to see the human ship's engines explode, or at minimum suffer catastrophic damage that would leave the vessel dead in space. Nothing happened. The plasma beam struck the metal hull and simply dissipated, its energy spreading across the surface and then vanishing as if absorbed by the material itself. The hull glowed red briefly where the beam had hit, but within seconds it cooled back to its normal gray color. The Resolute hung in space completely undamaged, its systems showing no signs of distress. On the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn, every officer stared at their displays in shocked confusion. Commander Thex ran immediate diagnostics on the weapon system, convinced that something had malfunctioned. But the computer confirmed that the plasma cannon had fired at full power, with perfect accuracy. The tactical sensors showed that the beam had indeed struck the target, but somehow the energy had been completely negated. Admiral Vorath felt the first stirring of real concern. He demanded an explanation from his crew. How could a ship with no shields withstand a direct hit from their most powerful weapon? Commander Thex reported something impossible. According to the sensor data, the human hull material had somehow absorbed and dispersed the plasma beam's energy. The metal itself appeared to have properties that shouldn't exist in simple alloys. The point of no return. Before Vorath could process this information, Captain Vasquez spoke again. Her voice was colder now, all traces of diplomatic courtesy gone. She stated that Admiral Vorath had just committed an act of war against the Terran Republic. She had given him fair warning, and he had chosen to ignore it. Now he would learn why that was a mistake. The human captain turned to someone off-screen and gave an order in her harsh native language. The translation appeared on Vorath's display. Fire Solution Alpha, full spread, target their weapons and propulsion systems. A female voice acknowledged the order with professional efficiency. Admiral Vorath opened his mouth to order evasive maneuvers, to raise shields to maximum, to do something to prepare for whatever these humans thought they could do to his mighty flagship, but he was already far too late. The universe exploded into chaos as something struck the Sovereign Dawn with devastating and impossible force. The entire ship shuddered as if struck by the fist of an angry god, and alarms began screaming from every station across the bridge. Human weapons had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same.